Right on the set. Take one. I will go on record saying this. Here's why the scientific community is spending all this time and money and energy to get to other planets and so forth. They're trying to kill God. Now, let me explain that statement. The minute you can find life of any kind on some other planet, asteroid, whatever, what you would say, well, see, there's proof. Nature can create life, and therefore they can kill God. We didn't come from God, you know. It was, they've done experiments where they have put certain ingredients, like in beakers, and run an electric charge through it, and they somehow pop out an amino acid. And then that becomes the basis of, see, it starts there, and then it builds into proteins. Life is too complicated. If anybody takes the time to study biology and look at life, it is way too, I know, you say, yeah, but there's so many trillions and trillions and trillions of planets out there. We're that one in a gazillion that had happened. But it's worked out too perfectly.
Yes.
Why isn't only one plant developed or one animal? But when you look at all the types of species that have existed, it took an intelligent designer. Now, I will say something controversial here if you like. I don't have a problem if the way God did it was through a Big Bang. And letting all, the way science explains how all the planets formed and star systems and all that, I don't have a problem if that's how God actually did it. And here's why I say that. I'm a programmer. I write programs that have to consider all kinds of possibilities that might upset the program. How do I end it gracefully if something comes in wrong? What if the information's wrong? What do I do when it's right? I have to consider a lot of things when I write a program. And I can tell you, God's a lot better programmer than me. He could literally set things up and just simply hit the start button and let it make it so. Are you saying we evolved from a monkey? What if we did? Would that really be the worst thing? Okay, could God have designed a process that started with an amoeba into multicellular organism, into a fish, into something that crawled onto the land, the story of Genesis says God in each one of these days is creating some class of something.
Yeah.
First he's doing stars and planets, and then he's got grasses and plants coming up, then he's got animals, and finally humans and all. Those are, you can look at those as stages. And I don't care if God said, I'm just going to have it go that way and I'll give science. I think God sometimes likes to give science something to work with to show that mankind would really like to, kill God.
Of course.
But he can build his process to come out any old way. He made mankind, he didn't just make a pair. He made all the races at once. And the more I think, if you will really think, get prejudices and preconceived ideas out of your mind. If God only made two people, Adam and Eve, okay, and of course everybody pictures them in whatever race they are.
Yeah.
Like I see Adam and Eve as two white people. Well, that doesn't mean they were two white people. They were two people, whatever. 6,000 years ago. And you're going to tell me that 6,000 years has been long enough for all of mankind to develop into all the races there are? You haven't studied biology. Yes, things change. I mean, we've got fish down in lakes inside of Mammoth Cave here in Kentucky, where the fish have no eyes. Why don't they have any eyes? They don't need eyes. It's totally dark all the time. They evolved to drop off things they weren't using. Okay, so I do believe creatures can modify themselves over time. I think evolutionists like to say it's like survival of the fittest. If mankind first started off with no arms, then here comes along men with arms. Well, they're probably going to beat the men with no arms because they're both fighting for the same food.
Whoa.
So the best thing survives and the others don't necessarily.
Survival of the fittest.
Okay, survival of the fittest kind of idea. So things change over time. I don't think it's a problem for God to create all the races at the same time. I mean, we have the bones of Neanderthals. We have the bones of Homo afarensis, or whatever it's called out of Africa, and Homo erectus, and all those different species. We've got their bones. Why are they here? I suspect they lived. Are there people who really think dinosaurs didn't exist? I mean, when you can find all these great big skeletons and piece them together, I think they existed. Okay, and no, I don't think they were on Noah's Ark or destroyed the flood. But if we've got their bones, those creatures existed. It sounds to me like man is slowly evolving over. I think the story of Adam and Eve says mankind finally got to a point where God can now work with it. He's intelligent to understand right from wrong. I don't think God could have a relationship with Neanderthals. They just weren't at the point in development where a God could work with them and them understand what he is. So I have no problem if we actually evolved that way. Now, if we didn't go that way, I don't have a problem with it either. Now, keep in mind, we didn't all come from Adam and Eve. We all came from Ham, Shem, and Japheth and their wives. Them, with Noah and his wife. They're the 8 that got saved after the flood. So regardless of what went on before the flood, from Adam up to the flood is 1,500 years? So actually, we've only been around, if the Bible's accurate, we've only been around for 4,500. And I haven't really noticed a big change in mankind since the time of Christ. So from 4,500 BC and whatever Noah and Ham, Shem, and Japheth were, whatever they look like, to the time of Christ, all them races are going to develop in 4,500 years. That actually doesn't make good sense on a scientific level. That's why you can have all kinds of theories on how did this happen. And I'm good with a lot of them, is what I'm saying. When I get to heaven, I'm going to have a lot of questions. How did you really do it? Come on, tell me. And those who like to stick strict to the Bible, go ahead. You might be right. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just glad he chose to save me.
That's right.
It is a little sad sometimes when we think about how many people have lived and died on this earth who never knew anything about God and his plan.
Yep.
What am I so special? Am I just the lucky one who's in the right place at the right time? I had 2 parents that happened to encounter Brother William Souders' ministry, and they found each other, and then, boom, I come along later down the road, and they're still in church.
Well, always when we talked a little bit with some of our friends, and we said, well, God doesn't work in happenstance. He has a,
no, I don't think
a
he
plan.
does. I have heard preachers talk about, it's not all set in stone what's going to happen to you. Your time is always, that Jesus said to his disciples. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a misleading statement, I think. In their mind, their time is always, because they don't know when they're going to die. But God does. He knows the exact circumstance, the exact second you'll take your last breath. And I think he's got a plan, and he's going to work it out for, as long as we stay on the path, working with God, we're doing good. If I veer off the path, clearly I'm not in good shape. Could I be shortening my time here on earth? God can keep me alive regardless of how bad my health is. And if he's doing that, thank you. Okay? But God could also be saying, Tim, if you just be a little healthier, I think you've reached your final stage by 74. But the way you're going, you're going to have a heart attack at 69 and die. So I think we all have to be conscious. Let's not get in our own way, but stay on the path, let God work us through. And I think he can get us to the finish line of what we need to become as a person, as long as we're willing to change, of course.
That's the kicker. That's the kicker,
being willing to change.
There was a saying that, is it hard to teach an old dog new tricks?
It isn't, and it isn't. What the hard part is the life lessons the old dog has already learned that he knows he can count on, versus here's this new thing, and is it worth the risk of making a change to it, or is it worth the risk of going to this instead of this? It's true of everything in life.
Of course.
You trust what you know. Mm-hmm. That has proven itself.
It's hard to try something different because it's the unknown.
And it's also, you get older, for some people it can be hard to learn to build new memories. Like we been talking about IT, learning new skill sets. I was fortunate that even when I started my first job, one of the languages I had to learn, because it was great for doing statistical analysis on data and spitting out reports, it's called SAS. Now SAS, as I understand, is still around, not in the way I learned it, but because of the way it worked, when I had to start, you don't know SQL, do you? Okay, it's a very popular language as far as querying a database. It's got a whole standard form about it. SQL was not hard for me to grasp because of my SAS learning. If I had not taken SAS, if I just went through the traditional programming method, SQL was harder to learn. So I've been fortunate to have been put in positions to have the capacity to learn new things, but that capacity is becoming more limited now. I do find myself now sometimes struggling for a word. I mean, names have always been elusive. I'll never forget your face. I can move from Louisville and see you again in 30 years and I'll recognize you. Might not remember your name. But now it's getting to where sometimes I'm trying to think of a person's name. I see their face. I know this person. Why can't I think of their name? Or the right word for something. It's like, oh, and it finally comes to me a couple of minutes later. But it concerns me. My memory's getting like that. I had an aunt, sweet lady. She was my mother's sister. She was also in the church. And she's been dead now for about 25 years. And she spent the last 3 years of her life in a nursing home. And her memory was going. And she clearly, you can come in, she could forget what she said 10 seconds ago. But she had all kinds of old memories she could tell you. But her short-term memory was terrible, When did you get here, Isaac? He'd been standing right in front of her for 10 minutes or something like that. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm headed that way. I don't know if I've got proteins building up my brains, heading towards Alzheimer's.